Charles, we've got breaking news.
What?
It's snowing in Germany in December. I know it's shocking. People are upset. How are you?
I think it's hilarious. I mean, between the images I'm seeing over here, I'm in Europe, where people have been stuck on stupid for, several generations, thinking that it makes sense to have these expensive socialist bureaucracies inside a country, then follow that with European Union on top of that, put the World Health Organization, the UN, and as many other, multinational organizations as you can dream of. And meanwhile, private sector employment opportunities are being crushed. And one scheme after another stands revealed as being nothing more than a personal self-enrichment scheme for these various bureaucrats and government leaders. So in Munich, it's not yet winter, it's late fall, but the images of these various private jets that are stuck in the snow, in some cases, it looks like they've frozen mid-flight, or I don't know what exactly happened.
Yeah,
and all these
this one's
jets,
like rotate, boom, frozen.
Yeah, they can't make it. Maybe it's John Kerry's jet if we're lucky, but they can't make it to some stupid-ass conference in Dubai, where the president of the conference is the president of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, and he has just given remarks to this group of criminals, the elders, this Mary Robinson lady, she was the crooked leader of Ireland a long time ago, which seems to have produced nothing but crooked leaders. So this guy gets up at the conference and says, there's no science supporting the threat posed by climate change. And the guy's right. There's all these are, to me, I remember, each of us has a unique growing up experience in school, but as the eldest son of a PhD in nuclear physics, who got sane when he was 26, having taken 2 years off to fight in World War II, I spent almost every day he was around being intimidated by his knowledge of science and what it took to be a scientist. So I said, F that, I can't do it for this. But I did well. I did well in school. I entered Yale with, you needed 36 credits to graduate. I entered 11 from high school, including 4 from chemistry and math, calculus, advanced calculus. So it's not that I couldn't do science, it's that I couldn't excel at science. And the people who do excel at science don't work in the main in the US Congress or in any of these bureaucracies. They're just running around, coming up with yet another threat to pose as being something we need to address by spending now. It's not billions, it's not tens of billions, it's not hundreds of billions. Now it's trillions of dollars to fight climate change. Who knows what they're going to come up with next? We need to get ready for the aliens. That's a quadrillion dollars. We got to make sure that they're used to living large. We can't just serve them Coca-Cola. They've got to have Lafitte Rothschild red wine, champagne.
Charles, wait a second, though. This guy, Sultan Al Jaber, he looks pissed off. What's the deal with him?
Well, these idiots in the UN, and I encountered some of this in the debates that I had when I was doing press TV in Iran, which seems to have quieted down. I think they're under sanction or something. But I debated one of these greenies, and in a moment where the evil was prepared to leap out of his mouth, he basically said on air, he said, look, our goal is not simply to convert people to use less energy. We don't want people moving around. We want them rooted to their local communities. We want them to seek permission to go more than 15 miles in a given day. We want them to change their diets. In short, we want them to be entirely subservient to people like Klaus Engel Schwab and others. And this is not a vision. I want to propose something we haven't talked about on air, but I'm going to propose it and get in trouble. The way life works. I hope I don't get too much additional.
Yeah. Are we sure we want to say this on YouTube?
Yeah, you'll like it. So in the censored world, the censored industrial complex, where the oligarchs who want to control every aspect of your life work and try to pull our strings, globalists is if you're a globalist, Jesus Christ is down there. You're way above. I mean, you're a globalist. You care about 70% of the planet that's water. because, all those fishes need to vote too. But if you're a nationalist, then you're evil, because you're trying to promote the self-interest of a small subset of the population. You're evil. Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm not a globalist. I'm not even a nationalist. I'm a personalist. I care about promoting the interests of individuals. And these structures that suffocate people, whether it's the local mayor of New York City, a waxed-head idiot and his crooked crew, or this governor. We have a local bureaucracy. We got a state bureaucracy run by an idiot and a bunch of corrupt idiots. We've got a national bureaucracy, multiple national, run by an imbecile who is so stupid he doesn't understand yet how crooked he and his family are. And on top of that, we got this moron from Portugal running around the world, speaking for the UN, telling Americans we've got to have a plan to get off meat. I've got a plan to get off meathead like you. Fuck you, Mr. Secretary General. I have no interest in getting off meat, because you, a non-expert in anything, are going to now tell me, as an American citizen, how to run my life.
Now,
Fuck
Charles,
off.
wait a second. Before we move off of the summit in UAE, and as far as getting off meat, perhaps that guy is promoting the LGBTQ agenda. But I just wanted to point out a series of things that are happening that speak to exactly what you're saying. First of all, Tesla introduced the long-awaited Cybertruck, which is not just a crazy-looking vehicle. There are a number of incredible innovations in this in terms of advancing electric vehicles. I mean, this shows in many ways some of the problems that traditional automobile companies are having, because the Cybertruck, it moves electric vehicles into 48 volts, which we won't get into on this show. But I mean, again, I just want to have people understand what a big deal it is. GM has sold less than 50 of this, which is the closest competition that they've got. This is the Hummer EV, so less than 50. I mean, this is something that was advertised on the Super Bowl. Multiple millions have been invested in this. People hate it. It's not doing well at all. And then separately, Joe Biden has made all these big overtures to the United Auto Workers Union, and they're pissed off because electric vehicles, just because you are the United Auto Workers Union, or you're Ford or GM, and you've been building internal combustion gasoline engine cars for 100 years, it doesn't mean you're able to innovate in this other field. Electric cars in many ways are closer to computers and electrical engineering than they are traditional automobiles. So I think we're seeing what started out as a crack becoming some kind of major fault in the U.S. auto industry that could have really serious implications through. We just don't yet know the way Joe Biden's setting us on this path of stupid. We don't know how that's going to play out.
Well, he defines the business model for stupid. I mean, the idea that in the United States, a country of 335 million people, which is 99% electrified, has infrastructure issues, but nothing like the majority of where a majority of the world's population lives, with no roads, no hospitals, no electricity, no clean water, et cetera. I could go on. So this idea that somebody who barely graduated from high school, went to a shit college, barely passed the bar. I'm talking here about Biden. We could talk about Hillary Clinton and others, but that person suddenly is so smart that he or she can not just simply make choices for us, but force us against our will to elect forces of action that in theory are so sainted and noble and protect everybody, but in practice are nothing more than grift alleys. Yeah. The Grift family, Bidenson, and other Grift families are marketing their, quote, brands. I got news for you. In politics, the value of a brand is zero. It should be zero. The fact that you are Jason Goodman, Charles Ortel, you name it, whoever, and you decide to go into politics does not mean that your family should be entitled to live large, the way all these families are living, nor does it mean that your spawn or progeny, whatever we want to call it, Chelsea and Hunter and the Bushes, should automatically, because of name recognition, leap back into the fray and get suck their hind tits back on the grift machine. That is just all rubbish. It has not served us well. And the statistics really bear it out. I notice, because I'm traveling and been so much, I haven't been on Twitter as much as I normally am. I am noticing a few things. First, I'm getting followers again, which is interesting. But second, Seamus Bruner has a new book. He's somebody who works closely with Peter Schweitzer about control oligarchs. And it goes after Murdoch, and it goes after Zuckerberg, and it goes after Soros and Gates and others. You'll want to listen to that book on tape. I'm going to want to read it. I think it may already be out, or it's coming out soon. But that's what this is all about. You have two stark visions. You have a vision that these nutcases think it's okay to attempt to direct the course of history for now 8 billion people because they're rich. This is ridiculous. We don't need to take instruction from Rupert Murdoch, who we could go into his personal choices, but getting with Jerry Hall, you got to ask yourself. I mean, that's not even sloppy seconds there. I mean, that's really bad stuff. And I don't want to take instruction from this guy or anybody else. I'm happy to have points of view expressed to me. I'm happy to consider multiple sources. I'm happy to make bad choices and learn from it. That is how you grow up. You make a bad choice and you learn that was the wrong way to go. And next time you don't do it again. But if you get force fed your entire life, I mean, think about the ways we've been force fed. We were told that we have this incredible CIA that didn't know about 9/11.
Yeah.
Then, when we retaliated, we were told that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. So having gone after, having supported Saddam Hussein in a crusade that killed 1 million Marsh Arabs and Iranians, we then turned on Saddam Hussein, following the advice of our masters at the CIA and MI6 and elsewhere. And ever since, the Middle East has been an utter disaster. More recently, we rushed out of Afghanistan and destroyed, I would argue, our ability to have a military alliance because we didn't inform our other NATO members. And mind you, in that battle in Afghanistan, what remains of Afghanistan, many, many Australians and Canadians and French and Germans and others in NATO and allied to us sent troops there. We didn't have the courtesy to tell anybody, including the locals, that we were leaving. We just hightailed it out there, left 85 billion as estimated of stuff on the ground. Why would you listen to anybody in this Biden administration? I mean, this reminds me of when Nick Brady, the former chairman of Dillon Reed, returned from being a senator. There was a meeting, the meeting we would go to as partners. We were sitting around a table, and at one of these meetings, and this guy was mouthing on and on and on about this and that, and we're going to do this and that in the energy world. And somebody passed a note to me because this guy was invoking Nick's name and says, the reason Nick likes this guy is because he's always wrong. And there is a value to finding somebody who's always wrong, huge value. And so that's Biden. He's always fucking wrong.
Well, but the problem is they're doing what he says instead of doing the opposite. You find the value in these guys by not listening to what they say. And instead, we're doing everything Biden says. Charles, I have one question for you, though, along the lines of grift, because I detect one, but I am not financially sophisticated to know what this would be all about. But it was announced just the other day that GM, which I feel like not that long ago got bailed out by Obama, and then later I saw a video explaining how it was actually a giveaway of all of GM's best technology and manufacturing technology to China. Now, this CEO lady, whose name I forget, she announced that they're having a record $10 billion stock buyback. So this reeks, and also the UAW, this is telling us again, is pissed off about the electrification. What is this? What's going on here, Charles? How are they stealing this money?
Well, okay, so I did a lot of work when I was writing for the Washington Times on GM and following my work exposing GE. And I have alleged in multiple formats, and I will not go back on my research because I think it's correct, that GM was not, in fact, restructured. It was plundered. Obama and his minions basically rewrote the law, and people who had gone in to try to save GM and had bought what are called secured debt, so it should have been senior in any bankruptcy, saw their rights torn to shreds by the lawless Obama administration. And then Steve I won't use the F word, but you can imagine Steve Rattner, delete Ner and add F, who is really a very miserable human being, in my opinion, but very well connected. He runs a lot of money for Mike Bloomberg. He's very well connected, and he's made money for himself. He was put in as the car czar, and he sold the notion that GM was restructured. It wasn't restructured. What they did is they protected some of the rights of the retired workers and the senior workers, but they created a two-tier wage structure for entry-level people, so they forced those wages down. They did all their analysis saying that they had saved GM North America. Well, I don't want to rescue Mexico or Canada. Right. And a lot of the plants that were with our taxpayer money, and so a lot of the plants that in theory were saved were in Mexico and Canada. The number of jobs protected by the restructuring were minimal to negative. And these fucking beasts are very expensive cars. I mean, so most Americans, it's a strange landscape we live in, most Americans prefer not to drive cars. They have SUVs, and most of them actually have trucks. But yet, the way in which they call them in the industry, they call them pass cars because they're going to have lingo. But passenger car plants are still scattered in too many places across the world. So on the one hand, if you were really trying to serve a global market for transportation, you would say, well, let's go to, as I say, the bottom 50% of the population, which doesn't really enjoy the benefit of good roads, and let's do stripped down cars for them. They don't need these fancy computers, so they just need to get from point A to point B reliably. In some of these places, it's hot all year long. So you clearly don't need a heater. Now, whether you need air conditioning is another question. Remember when Volkswagen, it's not the best model to bring up, but the Beetle, the people's car, that's the kind of thing that the global industry needs to do. The next thing they need to do is they need to probably shut down half of the existing car plants on the planet. But of course, they can't do that because particularly in Europe and in Canada and elsewhere in the United States, there are a lot of union workers who are way overpaid and pensioners who are way overpaid who vote and who are particularly active in Senate and House races. So it's really, when we combine, people talk about public-private partnerships. I refer to those as grift engines. Now, somebody who's seeking profit like a Musk doesn't need a lot of help. In some cases, he did get help he has gotten help, whether for his space venture or his electric car production. Maybe he does get government grants. But in the main, if you're truly profit-seeking, you try to stay away from government. And you pay your taxes, you obey the laws, but you don't want to involve Dick Durbin and John fucking Kerry and AOC and Rashida Tlaib and these kind of pitiful people who do not understand business, who don't care to understand. They understand power. They understand getting ahead by complaining or threatening. That's what they understand. They do not understand being productive members of society.
Yeah. Well, Charles, it seems like there might be some intelligence within the automobile industry, because everything that you're describing, it reminds me of a lot of other manufacturing industries in the United States. And sadly, for whatever reason, maybe this is just because as technology gets commoditized, the type of vehicle that you're describing, unfortunately, would be built in China right now in the current conditions for a lot less money than we can build it in the United States. In my view, if you hired me as an analyst of the automotive industry or to give you some sort of input into Dylan Reed's decision to do whatever with GM, I would recommend that they just find what the most profitable vehicles are and even focus on more specialized vehicles and famous brands, because China cannot reproduce the 75-year legacy of something like a Corvette. And this is actually smart. They're planning on spinning it off as its own brand and then launching a 4-door SUV. We see a lot of this happening in these high-performance manufacturers. Lamborghini and Aston Martin now have these things. So if there are people who want to buy $200,000 cars that do things that no other car does, in my mind, it makes a lot more sense to take your most valuable brand, downsize or eliminate everything that's wasting money, and just change the nature of what Corvette is. Make it more like a Ferrari or a top brand that is a very profitable, very expensive thing that buyers who don't care about the cost go after. And then maybe these other inexpensive cars just need to be manufactured by smaller companies or other companies, or who knows?
Yeah, so let's dissect that a little bit. So there's a structural issue that is not addressed in that analysis. And I think the structural issue is that where it was possible in Henry Ford's day to price cars at levels that the ordinary human being could actually afford to pay, that is no longer true. When the average family of 2.1 wage earners is making $75,000, that family can't pay $65,000 for one car, let alone in the scenario that really operates for the bulk of the country, where you need two cars. So the industry has driven inside the U.S. and inside Europe, the average price, forget about a Corvette, which is even more than that, or a fancy price of transportation of personal transportation is way too high. And within that, what I learned, and again, maybe things have changed, is that the broad market for a Corvette, Lamborghini, Ferrari, or whatever, is so small. I mean, it's interesting, but it's small. And the problem is that the General Motors and Ford and even Chrysler are massive. So
wouldn't work.
But aren't
they going to die to companies like BYD anyway? They've got to reinvent themselves. You can't just keep doing the same thing in the face of new evolving market. I'm just saying the thing that those brands that we're talking about have that the Chinese companies simply cannot, you're just not going to, it's going to take them 75 years and maybe never to build the legacy of a Mustang or a Corvette. And these are now famous brands. It's like the New York Yankees, and that's got value. So if a Mustang now becomes a $300,000 supercar and a Corvette becomes a $300,000 supercar, maybe these companies need to, I'd prefer to see it shrink to a specialized company than for my tax dollars to bail it out so whoever can get that $10 billion buyback. And this detail, Charles, they've increased their dividend by 33%. What the hell is that?
Right. Well, yeah, they shouldn't be paying. I mean, again, what governments shouldn't be in the business of bailing out companies. That's that is just a very, because the second CEOs who are paid too much anyway understand that if they win, they take as much as they want. You have CEOs when they win making, in some cases, $250 million or more a year. If they know when they lose, the company will be bailed out and nobody will be punished.
Right.
Then that is capitalism. That's not capitalism. You should understand that.
That's Bidenomics.
AKA capitalism. And by the way, the art department, what a great poster.
Thank you.
This is one of the earliest movies that I saw after How the West Was Won. This movie, in researching it, came out in 1960 when I was 4. Don't think I saw it until after that.
That's funny that you say that, Charles. I also remember seeing this movie in the theaters, because remember, 1975 or 6, you didn't have VHS, so these movies would be re-released. I remember my mom taking me to this movie. I hated it because I wanted cartoons, and I was like, who the hell are these people? I don't want this movie.
That's it. We have Young Sheldon, the TV show.
Young Jason was a big pain in the ass.
Young Charles was too. Old Charles is.
Well, Charles, we're almost out of time here on our free segment that introduces our viewers to the concept that they can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth and join us in just 5 minutes. In the First Amendment forum, we're going to go even more in depth and speak without being encumbered by the censors at YouTube. I'm talking to the FBI and all the UCOs, but people can join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. If you weren't watching last night, I did a very special counter lawfare report where I went through the entire 60B4 motion that's been filed in the Southern District of New York. This is potentially historic, so I hope people will watch that. But stay with us. We'll be back in less than 5 minutes for the First Amendment Forum. Thanks for watching, everybody.